Millionaire finds a child hugging his wife's headstone, but when he sees his face. William Bradford tightened his wool coat against his body as he walked along the snow-covered paths. 3 years had passed since that day that split his life into before and after, but the pain remained as present as the biting cold of that July morning. It was then that his steps froze. There was someone by Charlotte's headstone, a small, hunched figure hugging the grey marble stone as if it were the most precious thing in the world. A boy of no more than 8 years old, wearing a dark green coat too big for his thin body, was sobbing so intensely that his shoulders shook. William felt his heart race. No one was ever there when he visited. He always chose the emptiest times, when the fog still covered the mountains around Aspen and the other mourners were still asleep. How did that boy know Charlotte? Why was he crying like that? He took a few more steps, the sound of his dress shoes crunching against the packed snow. The boy didn't notice his approach, kept his face pressed against the cold stone, murmuring words that William couldn't make out. "Who are you?" William's voice came out harsher than he intended. The boy turned abruptly, and it was at that moment that William felt the world spin. The almond-shaped brown eyes, the left eyebrow slightly more arched than the right, the delicate heart-shaped face, and especially that small birthmark on the forehead, just above the right eyebrow, exactly in the same place. It was impossible, but there it was, before him, as if Charlotte had come back to life in the form of that frightened boy. The boy stammered, quickly wiping away tears with the back of his hand, dirty with soil. His clothes were old, patched in several places, and his sneakers were soaked, making it clear that he had walked a long way through the snow. William instinctively reached out his hand, trying to hold the boy before he ran away, but the gesture had the opposite effect. The boy ran off among the headstones, his small feet slipping in the snow, stumbling but always getting up, as if he were running from something terrible. "Wait!" William shouted, but his voice was lost in the cold wind. He still tried to run after him, but his dress shoes weren't made for that kind of chase. Within seconds, the boy had disappeared among the trees surrounding the cemetery. William stood there, panting, watching the trail of small footprints in the snow. Next to Charlotte's headstone, there was a small bouquet of wildflowers tied with an old piece of string. They were field flowers, probably picked right there in the surroundings, but arranged with a care that contrasted with their simplicity. He knelt before the headstone, picking up the flowers with trembling hands. Who was that boy? How did he look so much like Charlotte? And why was he crying as if he knew that woman who passed away 3 years ago? The questions pounded in his head as William remained there, holding the wilted flowers, feeling for the first time in years something beyond the empty pain of loss. It was confusion, it was fear, it was curiosity, it was a whirlwind of emotions he couldn't name. When he finally got up, he had been there for almost an hour. The snow had started falling again, small white flakes quickly covering the boy's footprints, erasing the only trace he had left. William returned to the car, a black Cadillac parked at the cemetery gate, but couldn't start the engine right away. He sat there, watching the wildflowers on the passenger seat, trying to process what he had just seen. His mind went back 3 years, to the last months with Charlotte. She had lost so much weight, her rosy cheeks replaced by a pallor that hurt to see. The brown hair she always kept long had started to fall out, but even so, she insisted on smiling at him every morning. "You need to rest," he would always say, worried about her frequent outings, even on days when she could barely stand. "I have important commitments," she would reply, but never said what those commitments were. He assumed they were doctors, treatments, appointments. Now, looking back, he realized he never asked properly. He was always too busy with the company, with meetings, with contracts. William felt a tightness in his chest. How many questions had he failed to ask? How many answers had Charlotte tried to give, but he wasn't present to hear? Finally, he started the car and drove along the winding road leading back to the center of Aspen. The town was waking up, shops beginning to open, tourists leaving their hotels for breakfast. But William saw none of it. He saw only those almond-shaped brown eyes filled with tears and fear. When he arrived at the mansion, a spacious European-style building atop a hill overlooking the valley, William went straight to the office. He ignored the maid who tried to offer coffee, ignored the phone calls that were already starting to ring, ignored everything except the business card he searched for in the drawer. Robert Jensen, Private Investigations. A discreet man who had provided services for the company a few times, always with efficiency and absolute secrecy. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. "Hello?" The investigator's deep, tired voice sounded from the other end. "Robert, it's William Bradford. I need your services, urgently." "Good morning, Mr. Bradford. Go ahead." William hesitated for a moment. How to explain what he saw, how to describe that impossible resemblance. "I want you to investigate a child, a boy about 8 years old, who was seen at the city cemetery this morning. I need to know who he is, where he lives, who his parents are. Everything. Any specific characteristics that might help? He has a birthmark on his forehead above the right eyebrow, brown hair, brown eyes, old clothes, looks like he doesn't have much money, and—" William stopped, feeling a lump in his throat. "He looks extremely like my wife." There was silence on the other end of the line. "I understand," Robert finally said, his voice now more serious. "I'll start today. I should have something for you in a few days. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." William hung up the phone and sank into the office's leather armchair. Through the large window, he could see the entire snow-covered valley, the little Bavarian-style houses that made Aspen look like a piece of Europe in the southern United States. Charlotte loved that view. She would spend hours sitting at that same window, watching the mountains, lost in thoughts he never asked about. He closed his eyes and let the memory come. Charlotte smiling as she prepared breakfast, even on the difficult days. Charlotte reading on the living room sofa, always with an embroidered bookmark that had been a gift from her mother. Charlotte waking in the middle of the night and getting out of bed quietly, thinking he was asleep. How many times had she left in the middle of the night? He always assumed it was to get water or medicine, but now doubt gnawed at him. Where did Charlotte go? What did she do? The following days were torture. William returned to the cemetery every morning, always at the same time, hoping to see the boy again. But each day he found only silence and the snow that continued to fall intermittently over the area. Robert called daily with discouraging updates. He checked all the orphanages in the area, all the schools, all the records of children that age. Nothing. The boy seemed to officially not exist. "It's like he's a ghost," the investigator said on the 5th call. "No child matching that description is enrolled in any public or private schools in the city. No records at health clinics. Nothing." "Keep looking," William insisted, his voice heavy with frustration. "He has to be somewhere." On the morning of the 10th day, when William was starting to think he had imagined everything, the boy finally appeared. He was kneeling before the headstone, carefully arranging a fresh bouquet of wildflowers. His breath formed small clouds of vapor in the icy air. This time William approached slowly, quietly, moving behind other headstones to avoid being seen. When he got close enough, he could hear the boy murmuring. "I brought the yellow flowers you liked," said the child's voice full of tenderness. "I had to walk really far to find them because it's so cold now. But I remembered you always said yellow flowers bring light to the heart." William felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. That phrase. Charlotte always used that exact phrase. Yellow flowers bring light to the heart. It was one of her favorite expressions, something her mother used to say. "I still don't understand why you had to leave," the boy continued, his voice now more choked up. "The director said you went to heaven, but I wish you had stayed here with me. You promised that one day we would be a real family." The words hit William like a punch to the gut. Promised they would be a family. What did that mean? He took another step, and this time a dry twig snapped under his foot. The boy immediately turned his head, his eyes widening when he saw William. "No!" he shouted, jumping to his feet. But as he tried to run, his foot slipped on the snow and he fell to his knees. William ran to him, but the boy was already getting up, fear written all over his face. Without thinking, without calculating, William knelt in the freezing snow, putting himself at the boy's eye level. "Please don't run," he said, his voice coming out softer than he expected. "I won't hurt you. I just want to talk." "Are you him?" asked the boy, his small hands trembling, whether from cold or fear it was impossible to tell. "Him who?" "Her husband. The man she always talked about but who never had time." The words were like a sharp blade cutting through what little certainty remained in William's world. Charlotte talked about him to this boy. How? When? Why? "Yes," he finally answered, his voice almost a whisper. "I am Charlotte's husband, William Bradford." The boy stared at him for a long moment, his eyes so much like Charlotte's that it hurt to look. Then suddenly all the sadness on his face turned to anger. "It's your fault," he shouted, his voice echoing among the headstones. "If you had paid attention to her, she would have told you about me. She wanted to tell you, but you were always too busy. She cried because of you." Each word was an accusation, each syllable a truth William wasn't ready to face. He opened his mouth to respond, to defend himself, but what defense was there? The boy was right. He was always too busy. "Charlotte cried?" was all he could manage to ask, his voice broken. "Every time she came back from seeing you," the boy replied, now with tears streaming freely down his face. "She said you were a good man, but that you couldn't stop to listen. She was going to tell you about me, she swore she would, but then she got very sick and there wasn't time." William felt his own tears begin to fall, something that hadn't happened since the funeral. There he was, a respected businessman, a man who always prided himself on staying in control, kneeling in the snow before a boy who was revealing truths he never knew existed. "How did you know her?" he asked, slowly reaching a hand toward the boy, who instinctively stepped back. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated, wiping his nose with the sleeve of his old coat. For a moment it seemed he would run away again, but something in William's face, perhaps the raw vulnerability, made him stay. "Ethan," he said softly. "My name is Ethan, and she found me when I was a baby." William felt the whole world converge in that moment, on that piece of information. Charlotte found a baby. How? Where? Why did she never say anything? "Where did you find me, Ethan?" "I don't really know." The boy shrugged, his body still tense, ready to flee at any moment. "She told me I was in a bad place and that she took me somewhere safe, to Mrs. Margaret's orphanage. She visited every Saturday, always at 2 in the afternoon, never missed. Saturdays at 2. William rewound his memory, trying to recall Saturdays with Charlotte. She always left at that time, saying she was going shopping, meeting friends, taking care of personal matters. He never questioned it. He trusted her completely, and she used that trust to visit a boy he never even knew existed. Why didn't she tell me? The question came out more like a lament than an inquiry. Ethan looked at him with those eyes too old for an 8-year-old. She said she was afraid, that she had promised someone to keep it a secret, but that one day she would manage to tell you everything, that you would understand, and that we would be a family. A family. Charlotte dreamed of making that boy part of their family, and William was too busy with spreadsheets and meetings to notice that his wife carried such a big secret. "Where do you live now, Ethan?" "In the orphanage. But I run away whenever I can to come here." The boy pointed to the gravestone. "Mrs. Margaret gets mad, but I don't care. I need to visit her. I need to bring flowers." William looked around. The cemetery was empty, just the two of them and the endless rows of snow-covered gravestones. The wind blew stronger now, bringing with it small ice crystals that stung their faces. "You're cold," he said, starting to take off his own coat. "You don't have to." Ethan took another step back. "I'm used to it." But William had already removed the fine wool coat, the one he bought in Paris on a business trip, and held it out to the boy. Ethan looked at the garment as if it were an alien object, something completely outside his world. "Please," William insisted, "take it." "Charlotte would want me to look after you." The mention of her name seemed to break something in the boy. He slowly took the coat, feeling the softness of the wool between his small, cold, cracked fingers. It was too big for him. The sleeves hung past his hands, but it was warm and smelled of expensive cologne. "Did she talk about me a lot?" William asked, unable to contain the need to know more. Ethan nodded, adjusting the coat around his body. Almost every visit. She said you were very smart, that you built a big company by yourself, that you took good care of her when you had time. But she was sad because you never really stopped to talk, you know. You just asked if she was okay and went back to work. Each word was a precise arrow in William's heart. It was true, he did that. He asked if she was okay, expected a yes, and returned to his important tasks. Important. What a funny word now, when he realized that nothing he did was as important as simply being present. "Can I ask you a question?" Ethan interrupted his thoughts. "Of course. Why do you work so much? Do we really need that much money?" The innocence of the question, the way the boy included himself in that "we," as if he already belonged to the family Charlotte dreamed of building, left William speechless for a moment. I don't know," he finally admitted, and it was the most honest truth he had spoken in years. "I think I lost my way. I forgot what really matters." Ethan watched him with that intensity only children have, that way of seeing through the masks adults wear. "She always said that you had lost your way, but that one day you'd find it again." Charlotte believed in him, even when he gave no reason for it. She kept hoping he would wake up, that he would notice, that he would be present, and he never woke up in time. "Ethan, can you take me to the orphanage? I want to talk with Mrs. Margaret." Fear immediately returned to the boy's eyes. "No, she can't know I'm running away again. She already said if I run away one more time, she'll have to send me somewhere else, a place farther away where I won't be able to come here." "What if I go alone? Can you give me the address?" Ethan bit his lower lip, clearly conflicted. Finally, he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pants pocket and a worn-down pencil. With a childish, uneven hand, he wrote an address. "But don't tell her I told you about her visits, please," he begged, handing over the paper. "Mrs. Margaret makes things difficult when she thinks someone is asking questions." William took the paper, carefully storing it in his shirt pocket, close to his heart. "I promise. I'll say I found the address among Charlotte's things." "And the coat?" Ethan looked at the expensive piece he was wearing. "How do I return it?" "Don't. It's yours now. A gift." "But it's very expensive." "It's not as expensive as the time I let slip away," said William, and for the first time in 3 years he felt he was saying something true, something that came from the depths of his soul. Ethan nodded slowly, still unsure about trusting this man who had suddenly appeared in his life. But there was something in the way William looked at him, a mix of pain and determination, that made the boy feel that maybe, just maybe, Charlotte was right about him. "I need to go back," said Ethan, already stepping away. "If Mrs. Margaret notices I'm gone again—" "Wait," William called to him. "When will you come back here? Can we talk more?" "I don't know. It depends on when I can get away again." "What if I pick you up at the orphanage? We can arrange a visit." Ethan shrugged, clearly not believing that would happen. "Okay, but don't tell about the flowers, please. It's our secret, hers and mine." "Our secret," William repeated, and for the first time in a long while he felt he was making a promise he truly intended to keep. The boy waved timidly and ran off, the oversized coat making a rustling sound as he disappeared among the trees. William stood there, watching until he could see nothing but the falling snow. He turned to Charlotte's headstone, kneeling in the same spot where the boy had been minutes before. The stone was cold under his hands, but he embraced it as if he could embrace the woman beyond it. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered, his voice lost in the wind. "Why did you keep it to yourself?" But there were no answers there, only the silence of the falling snow and the weight of questions not asked when there was still time. William stood up, brushed the snow from his pant knees, and walked back to the car. In his shirt pocket, the crumpled paper with the address seemed to weigh more than it should. He took it out, smoothed it carefully, and read the childish, crooked writing again. Hydrangea Street, 487, St. Clair's Orphanage. That piece of paper was a bridge to a past he didn't know existed, to a part of Charlotte's life that she had kept hidden from him. And William knew he needed to cross that bridge, even if on the other side he found truths he would rather not know. The way back home was long, not because of the distance, but because of the weight of his thoughts. Aspen passed by the car window like a blur of colors, the little houses decorated for winter, The shops with decorated windows, the tourists taking pictures in the snow. Everything seemed surreal after what had just happened. When he arrived at the mansion, William did not go to the study as usual. He went straight to the room that had been Charlotte's. That room he had turned into a kind of untouched sanctuary since she left. The curtains were closed, keeping everything in a permanent half-light. He opened the curtains for the first time in 3 years, letting the grey light of the cloudy day in. Dust danced in the air, revealing how much time had passed without anyone really occupying that space. William began to search. He opened the closet, running his hands over the clothes that still smelled faintly of her perfume, white flowers and vanilla. He looked in the dresser, opening each drawer carefully, as if he were desecrating something sacred. In the third drawer at the bottom, hidden under piles of embroidered handkerchiefs that had belonged to Charlotte's mother, he found it. An envelope yellowed with time, no sender, no recipient. Inside, there were photos. The first photo showed Charlotte, visibly younger, perhaps 6 or 7 years ago, holding a baby in her arms. The child was no more than a few months old, wrapped in a faded blue blanket. Charlotte smiled at the camera, but it was a different smile, filled with something William couldn't identify. Protection? Fear? Love? The second photo showed the same baby, a little bigger now, maybe a year old, playing with colourful blocks on a parquet floor William didn't recognize. Charlotte was sitting next to him, watching tenderly. There were more photos, many more. The baby growing, turning into a small child, always with Charlotte nearby. In all of them, she wore simple clothes, different from the ones she wore at home. None of the jewelry William gave her, none of the expensive dresses. It was as if it were a parallel Charlotte, living a parallel life. In the last photo in the envelope, William saw clearly. It was Ethan, probably 6 years old, holding a colourful drawing, while Charlotte applauded in the background. And there, in that image frozen in time, William could see the pure, unconditional love in his wife's eyes. He sat on the bed, the photos scattered around him, and finally allowed the tears to come. They were not just tears of sadness for the loss, but of anger for having been blind, of guilt for not having noticed, of pain for having missed the chance to know that part of Charlotte. How long he stayed there, crying among the photos, he didn't know. When he finally managed to pull himself together, the sun was already setting, tinting the snow outside with shades of pink and orange. William carefully gathered the photos, putting them back in the envelope, and went to the study. He picked up the phone and called Robert again. "Mr. Bradford," the investigator answered on the first ring. "I was just about to call. I found something." "So did I," said William. "But first, tell me what you found." "I found records of monthly donations your wife made to St. Clair's orphanage, significant amounts, always on the same day each month, for at least the last 7 years. I also found records of her visits to the place, every week, always on Saturdays." William closed his eyes. 7 years. Charlotte had been visiting that boy for 7 years, and he had never noticed. How had he been so blind? "There's more," Robert continued. "I managed to speak with a former employee of the orphanage who retired last year. She said your wife had a special bond with a specific boy, that she visited only him, brought him gifts, spent hours playing. According to this woman, there were rumors among the staff that the boy could be the biological son of his wife, but no one ever confirmed anything. Biological son. The words echoed in William's mind. Could it be possible? But no, it didn't make sense. Charlotte was always at home. He would have noticed a pregnancy. Unless... "Robert, can you find out the boy's origin? Where he came from, who left him at the orphanage?" "I'm already working on that. The official records are scarce, but I have some contacts who might help. I should have more information in a few days." "Thank you. And Robert, be discreet. I don't want this to become gossip around town." "I always am, Mr. Bradford." William hung up and stared at the phone for a long time. Each piece of information created more questions than answers. It was like putting together a puzzle in the dark, without knowing what the complete picture was. That night he couldn't sleep. He stayed awake, looking at the ceiling, rewinding every memory he had of Charlotte, searching for clues he might have missed. The Saturdays when she left smiling and returned with red eyes. The suspicious calls she ended quickly when he entered the room. The times he found her crying and she said it was nothing, just tiredness. He had accepted all the simple explanations, never digging deeper, never truly questioning. It was easier to believe that everything was fine, that Charlotte was just being Charlotte, sensitive and emotional as she always was. But everything was not fine. Charlotte carried a huge secret, a burden that probably contributed to worsening her health, and William was too busy to notice. The next morning, he didn't go to the office. He called his secretary saying he was sick, something he had never done in his entire career. The company could wait. This couldn't. He drove to the address Ethan had given him. Hydrangea Street was in a neighborhood farther from the center, where the houses were simpler and the streets less well kept. The orphanage was an old two-story building, painted in faded yellow, with a small garden in front where some children were playing in the snow. William parked across the street and watched for a while. Children of various ages ran, laughed, fought, lived. Was Ethan among them? He searched with his eyes but couldn't identify the boy. Finally, he gathered courage and crossed the street. The front door was open, leading to a small hall with peeling walls and a smell of food and disinfectant. A woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled into a tight bun appeared from a side door. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking William up and down. His expensive clothes and businessman demeanor clearly stood out from the surroundings. "I'd like to speak with Mrs. Margaret." "That's me, and you are?" "William Bradford. My wife used to visit this place. Charlotte Bradford." Margaret's face changed completely. The initial suspicion gave way to something softer, a mix of surprise and compassion. "Mr. Bradford," she said, her voice now gentler. "Please, come in. Let's talk in my office." The office was a small, cluttered room, with an old wooden desk covered in papers and a shelf full of disorganized files. Margaret pointed to a chair for William and sat behind the desk. "I'm sorry for the loss of your wife," she began. "Charlotte was an extraordinary woman. We missed her a lot when she passed." "Thank you," William replied automatically, but that wasn't why he was there. "Mrs. Margaret, I need you to be honest with me. I recently discovered that my wife visited this place for years, but she never told me about it. I'm trying to understand why." Margaret sighed deeply, clasping her hands on the desk. "This is complicated, Mr. Bradford. Charlotte made me promise to keep some things secret." "She's no longer here," said William, trying to keep his voice steady. "And I need to know. I need to understand who my wife really was, beyond the woman I thought I knew." The director studied him for a long moment, as if weighing how much she could reveal. "She came because of a boy," she finally said. "Ethan. She brought him here when he was just a baby 8 years ago." "How did she find him?" "That I don't know for sure." Charlotte never wanted to give details. She only said she found him in a difficult situation and couldn't leave him there. She brought him here, paid for everything he needed, and visited him every week without fail. "For 8 years she did this, and I never knew," William murmured, more to himself than to Margaret. "She was afraid, Mr. Bradford, afraid of how you would react, afraid you would ask her to stop, afraid of losing the boy. Ethan became, well, he became like a son to her." The words hit William like a speeding train. A son. Charlotte had a son he never knew, a child she loved and cared for in secret. "Did she plan to tell me?" "Yes," Margaret nodded. "In recent months she talked about it a lot, said she would find the right moment to reveal everything, that she would convince you to adopt Ethan officially. But then she got very sick very fast and there was no time." "Did she suffer from keeping this secret?" "Very much," admitted the director, her eyes growing moist. "I could see it in her eyes every time she visited. She loved both of you, you and Ethan, but felt she had to choose between keeping you apart or risking losing one of you by telling the truth." William felt a sharp pain in his chest. Charlotte suffered alone, torn between two loves, and he was too busy to notice. "Can I meet him? Ethan?" Margaret hesitated. "He is here, but, Mr. Bradford, Ethan is a complicated child. Since Charlotte passed, He's become very withdrawn, rebellious. He runs away constantly, doesn't get along well with the other children. He blames the world and especially you for what happened. He told me that. We met at the cemetery a few days ago. Then you already know how he feels. I must warn you that approaching him may be difficult. Ethan has built very high walls around himself. I have time, said William with a determination that surprised even himself. For the first time in a long time, I have all the time in the world. Margaret studied him again, and something she saw must have convinced her because she nodded slowly. All right, I'll call him. But, Mr. Bradford, please be patient. He's just a child who lost the only person who truly loved him. She left the office, leaving William alone with his turbulent thoughts. He looked around at the peeling walls, at the small window overlooking the garden where the children continued playing. That place needed so many repairs, so much investment. How could Charlotte see that every week and not bring him along to help? Because she was afraid, he remembered. Afraid he wouldn't understand, wouldn't accept it, would tell her to stop. And knowing himself from 3 years ago, William admitted she was probably right to be afraid. The door opened and Ethan entered, Margaret right behind him. The boy stopped when he saw William, his whole body tensing, ready to flee. "You can go, Mrs. Margaret," said Ethan without taking his eyes off William. "I won't run away this time." The director looked between the two, clearly worried, but eventually agreed and left, closing the door behind her. "Hi," said William, feeling ridiculously inadequate. "How do you talk to a child?" He had no experience with this. "Hi," Ethan replied, still standing near the door, keeping his distance. "Do you still have the coat?" "It's in my room. Mrs. Margaret said it's too expensive for me to wear every day, that I have to save it for special occasions." William almost smiled at the irony. He had hundreds of expensive coats. That one meant nothing to him, but for Ethan, it represented something too special for daily use. "You can wear it every day if you want. I can give you others too." Ethan shrugged, uninterested. "No need. I don't want your things just because you're feeling guilty." The child's brutal honesty was like a slap in the face, but William knew he deserved it. "You're right," he admitted. "I feel guilty, very guilty, but that's not the only reason I'm here." "Then why are you?" "Because Charlotte loved you and I loved Charlotte, and if she loved you, then you must be someone special." "I'm not special," said Ethan, his voice growing softer. "I'm just a kid nobody wanted. Even my own mother left me in a bad place when I was a baby. If Charlotte hadn't found me, I'd probably be dead." The rawness with which the boy spoke about his own life broke William's heart. "Your mother left you? Charlotte told you that?" "She didn't want to tell me, but I heard her talking with Mrs. Margaret once. She said a woman left me in a horrible place and disappeared. Charlotte was passing by, heard me crying and found me. She brought me here and promised she'd take care of me until she could give me a real family." "She never mentioned who that woman was?" Ethan shook his head no. "No. And I never really wanted to know either. What kind of mother does that to a baby? I don't want to meet someone like that." William stood up slowly, approaching the boy. Ethan took a step back but didn't run away. "Ethan, I know you're angry with me, and you have every right to be. I failed Charlotte. I wasn't there when she needed me. But I'm here now, and I want—" He paused, searching for the right words. "I want to try to fix this. I can't bring Charlotte back, but I can try to be what she wanted me to be." "And what did she want?" "A family. She wanted us to be a family, you, me, and her. I can't complete that family the way she dreamed, but I can try to build something new, if you let me." Ethan looked at him with those eyes so much like Charlotte's, full of doubt and hope fighting for space. "Why should I trust you?" It was a fair question. William knelt again, coming down to the boy's level. "Because I promise I won't abandon you like I did her. Because I learned that work and money mean nothing if you're alone. Because when I look at you, I see her, and I can't just turn my back on the only thing she loved besides me." "She didn't love you more than she loved me," said Ethan with surprising conviction. "She loved you both equally. That's why she suffered so much. She couldn't have you both at the same time." "Then let's change that," said William. "We can't bring her back, but we can honor her memory by being the family she wanted us to be." Ethan stayed silent for a long moment, his child's brain processing everything. Finally, he took a small step toward William. "Are you really going to stay? You're not just going to visit once and disappear." "I'll stay, I promise." "How do I know you'll keep your promise?" William thought for a moment, then extended his hand with his pinky raised. "Ever made a pinky promise?" Ethan looked at the hand as if unsure what to do, but then, hesitantly, hooked his small pinky around William's. "Charlotte used to say pinky promises can't be broken," murmured the boy. "Then I won't break it," said William, feeling something inside him warm up for the first time in 3 years. Margaret chose that moment to knock on the door and enter, interrupting the moment. She looked at the two of them with a cautious expression. "Is everything all right here?" "Yes," Ethan replied, surprising everyone, including himself. "Everything's fine." "Mrs. Margaret," said William, standing up, "I'd like to discuss arrangements to visit Ethan regularly. What would the procedures be?" The director blinked, clearly not expecting that. "Well, we'd have to establish a schedule, run some background checks, nothing too complicated for someone in your position. Are you thinking about eventually adopting?" The word hung in the air like a real, tangible, frightening possibility. "Yes," said William, and realized it was true. "So eventually, yes." Ethan looked at him with wide eyes as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Really?" "Really," William confirmed. "But these things take time. We have to get to know each other better first, make sure it's what we both want." "I want to," Ethan said quickly, almost desperate. "I really want to." Margaret sniffed, discreetly wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. "Well then, let's start the procedures. Mr. Bradford, if you can come tomorrow, we can discuss the details and begin the paperwork." "I'll be here," William promised. In the following days, William found himself immersed in a world completely different from his own. There was paperwork to fill out, interviews with social workers, background checks. But more importantly, there was Ethan. William began visiting the boy every day. Sometimes they spent just an hour together, talking in the orphanage garden. Other times, William took him for walks around the city, showing him places he had never seen. Ethan was a complex child. He could be sweet and vulnerable one moment, and the next be closed off and defensive. He constantly tested William, expecting him to give up, to realize it wasn't worth it. But William didn't give up. Every time Ethan pushed, he came back the next day. Every time the boy said something cruel, trying to push him away, William absorbed it and remained present. It was during one of these visits that Ethan finally began to talk about Charlotte for real. "She always smelled like flowers," the boy said as they sat on a park bench, eating ice cream despite the cold. "And she always brought hidden candies in her bag. She said it was our secret that Mrs. Margaret couldn't know because there were rules about sugar." William smiled, imagining Charlotte doing that. "She liked to break small rules when she thought it was worth it." "She taught me how to read," Ethan continued. "She spent hours with me, repeating the same words until I got it. She never got impatient, never gave up." "She was patient," William agreed, feeling a pang of pain. "With me too. Too patient, perhaps." "Why didn't you have children?" Ethan asked suddenly. "If she liked kids so much, why didn't she have children with you?" It was a question William had asked himself thousands of times over the years. "We tried," he admitted, "for a long time. But we couldn't. Charlotte could never get pregnant. It was very painful for her." "That's why she wanted me so much," Ethan said, as if a puzzle piece finally clicked into place. "I was the child she couldn't have." "I think so," William agreed. "But you weren't a substitute, Ethan. You were real to her. You were loved for who you were, not for representing something else." Ethan fell silent, licking the ice cream dripping down the cone. "I miss her every day," he said finally, his voice small. "Every morning I wake up, and for a second I forget she's gone. Then I remember, and it hurts all over again." William put his arm around the boy's thin shoulders, pulling him close. "Me too. Every day, all the time. But you know what helps? Talking about her, remembering the good things, keeping her memory alive through stories." "Will you forget her if I tell you all my stories?" asked Ethan, looking up. "There won't be any more mystery, more new things to discover about her." "I will never forget," promised William. And there will always be more to discover. People are like books, Ethan. The more you read, the more you realize there are layers you haven't seen before. They sat there until the ice cream was gone, and the sun began to set, tinting the snow with golden hues. And for the first time since Charlotte was gone, William felt something beyond the hollow pain of loss. He felt purpose. Meanwhile, Robert continued his investigations. He called regularly with updates, each one revealing more about Charlotte's secret life. "I found out more about the donations," he said in one of these calls. "Your wife didn't just give money to the orphanage. She also donated to a medical clinic on the outskirts of the city, always in the name of a specific patient, a woman named Teresa Collins." "Who is Teresa Collins?" "I'm trying to find out. The name doesn't appear in any recent local records. It's as if she had disappeared or—" He hesitated. "Or what? Or never existed. It could be a fake name, Mr. Bradford, something used to hide someone's true identity." William felt a chill. Each answer created two new questions. Who was Teresa Collins? Why would Charlotte use a fake name? What else was she hiding? "Keep investigating," he ordered. "I want to know everything." It was Margaret who brought the next piece of the puzzle. She called him one day, saying she had something to show him. When William arrived at the orphanage, she led him to a locked cabinet in her office. From inside, she took out an old shoebox tied with a string. "Charlotte left me this," explained Margaret. "She said that if anything happened to her, and if one day you came looking for answers, I should give this to you." William took the box with trembling hands. Inside there were letters, dozens of handwritten letters, all addressed to him but never sent. He opened the first one with fingers that could barely hold the paper. "My dear William, I write this letter for the 10th time this month, but like all the others, I know I won't have the courage to give it to you. How do I tell you something so big, so important, when you barely have time to ask how my day was? 8 months ago, my life changed completely. I found a baby, William. An abandoned baby, crying alone in a place that gives me chills just to remember. I couldn't leave him there. I couldn't just call the authorities and walk away. Something inside me connected with that child. I brought him to a safe place, an orphanage run by a woman with a huge heart named Margaret. She agreed to take care of him, and I promised I would come back. And I did. Every week, without fail. The baby has brown eyes like mine, William, and a birthmark on his forehead that looks like the one my mother had. It's as if the universe had given me the child we couldn't have together. I know I should have told you. Every day I promise myself I will find the right words, the right moment. But you are always so busy, so distant, so immersed in work. And I'm afraid. Afraid that you won't understand. Afraid that you will ask me to stop. Afraid of losing this little joy I have found. Forgive me for keeping this from you. One day I promise I will find the courage. With all my love, Charlotte. William didn't realize he was crying until he saw his tears staining the paper. He opened another letter, and another, and another. They were years of unspoken words, of confessions never made, of love and fear and hope all mixed together. In a letter dated 2 years ago, Charlotte wrote, "Ethan called me mother today for the first time. My heart almost burst with happiness and pain at the same time. Happiness because it's all I ever wanted to hear. Pain because I know I don't have the right to be called that, not officially, not while I keep him hidden from you. He's growing so fast, William. He's already a clever little boy, curious, full of questions about everything. He asks about you, you know. Wants to know why the husband I talk about so much never comes to visit me there. I tell him you're very busy, very important. He doesn't understand yet what it means to be too busy for the things that matter, but I do. And it hurts to see my son, yes, I consider him my son, grow up without knowing the man I love. It hurts to think that you might never know this wonderful child who brought light back into my life. I'm gathering courage, my love. I promise I'll tell you everything soon. I just need the right moment when you're present, not just physically, but truly, when I feel you're ready to listen. Waiting patiently, Charlotte." There were dozens of letters, a chronology of secret love and growing guilt. In the last ones, written just months before Charlotte passed away, the tone changed. There was urgency, despair. "William, I'm getting sicker. I feel it in my bones, in the fatigue that won't go away, in the way my body is betraying me. I don't know how much time I have, but I know it's not enough for everything I still want to do. I need to tell you about Ethan. I can't leave this child alone, with no one. You're the only person I trust to care for him, to love him as he deserves to be loved. Tomorrow, I promise. Tomorrow when you get home from work, I'll sit with you and tell you everything. I won't accept excuses. I won't let you escape to the office. You will listen to me. Will. God give me strength, Charlotte. But there was no tomorrow. William remembered that day. Charlotte waited for him with dinner ready, but he called saying he had an important meeting, that he'd be home late. When he finally got home, she was already asleep. Or pretending to sleep, he realized now, probably crying into the pillow. In the last letter, dated 1 week before Charlotte was hospitalized for the last time, the handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. My dear, I no longer have the strength to wait for the right moment. I need you to know, even if I can't tell you in person, Ethan is the son of my cousin Teresa. You never met her because we drifted apart years ago, by her choice. She had a difficult life, made bad choices, got involved with dangerous people. When she found out she was pregnant, she panicked. She didn't want the child to grow up in that environment, but she also didn't want the family to know. She called me when she was 8 months pregnant, begging for help. I hid her in a rented house on the outskirts of the city, took care of her during the pregnancy. When Ethan was born, she held him only for a few minutes before handing him to me and disappearing. She said it was better this way, that the baby would have a better chance away from her. I promised Teresa I would keep it a secret. I promised I would protect Ethan, that I would give him the home she couldn't provide. I brought him to the orphanage because I didn't know how to tell you, how to explain that we suddenly had a baby. I was afraid of your reaction, afraid you wouldn't understand. But I started to love him, William. With every visit, with every smile, with every time he called me. He became the son we couldn't have, and I wanted so much to bring him home, to make him officially our son. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you while I was alive. It means I failed in the only thing that really mattered. Please don't blame Ethan for my mistakes. He's innocent in all this. Take care of him, love him, be the father I know you can be when you stop hiding in your work. Always yours, Charlotte. William folded the last letter with trembling hands, placing it back in the box along with all the others. Every word was a stab in the heart, every confession a weight he would have to carry forever. She suffered a lot, said Margaret softly, watching him from across the table. But she never regretted taking care of Ethan. Even in the hardest moments when her illness was at its worst, she spoke of him with so much love. Teresa Collins, William murmured. Her cousin. I never knew Charlotte had a cousin with problems. Charlotte was very private about her family. Always was. William remembered. Charlotte's family was small, just an elderly mother who passed away years ago and an older brother. A brother. William hadn't even thought of him since the funeral. Her brother, he said suddenly. David. Did he know about Ethan? Margaret nodded slowly. He showed up here a few times, always when Charlotte was visiting. They argued a lot. I never heard what the arguments were about, but it was clear he was upset about something. David Morrison. William hadn't spoken to him since the funeral, and even then the interaction had been minimal. David had always been distant, kind of sharp, clearly resentful about something. He and Charlotte weren't close, but William always assumed it was just a weird family dynamic. I need to talk to him, said William, standing up. Thank you for showing me the letters, Mrs. Margaret. May I take them? Charlotte wanted you to have them. William carefully put the box away and left the orphanage. His mind was racing, connecting dots, seeing patterns he hadn't noticed before. If David knew about Ethan, why did he never say anything? Why did he remain silent even after Charlotte's passing? He drove straight to David's house, a modest home in the north part of the city. He knocked on the door harder than he intended, his impatience showing. David answered with a drink in his hand, his eyes red and swollen. It was clear he had been drinking heavily. William, he said with surprise, didn't expect to see you. We need to talk. Now. About what? About Ethan. About your sister. About all the secrets you kept. David's face went pale. He took a step back, opening the door for William to come in. The house was a mess. Empty bottles scattered around, clothes thrown on the sofa, clear evidence that David was not doing well. "So you found out," said David, collapsing into an armchair. "Thought it would take longer." "You knew all along." "Not all along. Charlotte told me about 3 years ago when she was getting sick. She wanted me to know in case something happened to her." "And you never thought to tell me?" David let out a bitter laugh. "She made me promise not to tell. And I had my reasons for accepting that promise." "What reasons?" David took another sip of his drink, his eyes avoiding William's. "Charlotte was paying me to keep quiet." The silence that followed was deafening. William felt his anger grow, a hot wave rising from his stomach to his head. "You were blackmailing your own sister." "Don't call it blackmail," David defended weakly. "Call it compensation. She had plenty of money. You made sure of that. And I was having financial troubles. She offered to help me in exchange for my silence." "She offered or you demanded?" David didn't answer, which was answer enough. "For how long?" 2 years, from when she told me until the end." 2 years. For 2 years, David financially bled his sick sister, taking advantage of her desperation to keep the secret about Ethan. "You're despicable," said William, each word loaded with contempt. "Your sister was dying, suffering from a terrible illness, and you took advantage of that to make money." "You don't understand," David tried to argue, but his voice was weak. "I was suffering too. I lost my job, my wife left me, I was drowning in debt. Charlotte had so much and I had so little, it wasn't fair." "It wasn't fair? Do you think it was fair to weigh even heavier on her shoulders? Do you think it was fair to make her carry not just the secret, but also the guilt of paying you to keep it?" David began to cry, drunken tears streaming down his face. "I know I was a monster. I know it every day when I wake up. That's why I drink, understand? To forget what I did. To not have to face the fact that I failed the one person who cared about me." William felt his anger mix with disgust and a hint of pity. David was pathetic, an empty shell of a man corroded by guilt and alcohol. "How much did she pay you?" $5,000 a month, for 2 years. $120,000. William remembered the spreadsheets Charlotte kept, the expenses he thought were excessive but never questioned. Part of that money was going to the orphanage, another part to the clinic, and another still to bribe her own brother. "And after she was gone, didn't you think you should tell me?" "I thought about telling you, 1,000 times. But how? How would I come to you and say, 'Oh, by the way, your wife had a secret son, and I blackmailed her for it'? You would sue me, you would destroy me, and I was already destroyed enough." William turned his back on David, unable to bear looking at him any longer. "I should sue you. I should make you pay for every penny you took from her. I know, and if you want to do that, I understand. I won't fight." William stopped at the door, turning one last time. "Charlotte deserved a better brother. Ethan deserved a better uncle. And I should have noticed something was wrong. We're all guilty, David, but you actively chose to hurt her. That I can't forgive." He left without looking back, leaving David alone with his guilt and his empty bottles. On the way back home, William called Robert. "I found information about Teresa Collins," he said, telling him everything he discovered in the letters. "I need you to find her. I need to talk to her." "If she's alive, I'll find her," the investigator promised. "It might take some time, but I'll find her." In the following days, William continued visiting Ethan, but now with an extra weight on his heart. Every time he looked at the boy, he saw not only the resemblance to Charlotte, but also thought of Teresa, the birth mother who abandoned him. "You're different," Ethan observed one day, while they were having lunch together at a small restaurant near the orphanage. "Sadder." "I'm thinking a lot," William admitted. "About your birth mother." Ethan dropped his fork, his appetite disappearing immediately. "She's not my mother. Charlotte was my mother. Charlotte loved you as if she were your mother. But there's a woman out there who gave birth to you, and I need to find her. Why? Ethan's voice was full of anger. Why do you want to find someone who threw me away? Because I need to understand the whole story. I need to know why she did what she did, if she regrets it, if she thinks about you. And he hesitated, knowing the next part would be difficult. Because to adopt you officially, I might need her permission. Ethan turned pale. What if she doesn't want to? What if she says no? Then we'll find another way, but let's try to do things the right way, okay? The boy nodded slowly, but William could see the fear in his eyes. Fear of being rejected again, fear that the woman who abandoned him still had power over his future. Robert took 3 weeks to find Teresa Collins. She was living in Denver, 4 hours from Aspen, working at a laundromat and living in a tiny apartment in a poor neighborhood. She has no criminal record, Robert informed him. Seems to be living a simple and honest life. Do you want me to make initial contact, or do you prefer to talk to her directly? I'll do it myself, William decided. This is something I need to do personally. The trip to Denver was long and full of confused thoughts. What would he say to the woman who abandoned Ethan? How would she react upon learning he was alive and well, cared for by others? The building where Teresa lived was old and worn, with peeling walls and a staircase that creaked dangerously. William climbed to the 3rd floor looking for apartment 312. He knocked on the door 3 times before hearing movement on the other side. The woman who opened it was thin, with deep, dark circles, and hair tied in a messy ponytail. She was about 35, but looked older, tired by life. Yes? She asked suspiciously. Teresa Collins, who wants to know? My name is William Bradford. Was Charlotte Morrison's husband. Teresa's face transformed. Surprise, fear, guilt, all passing over her features in a matter of seconds. How did you find me? May I come in? I'd rather talk in private. She hesitated, but eventually opened the door. The apartment was small and simple, but clean and organized. There was only the essentials: a worn-out sofa, a small table, some shelves with cheap books. Charlotte has been gone for 3 years, Teresa said softly, sitting on the sofa and pointing to a chair for William. I read it in the paper. I wanted to go to the funeral, but I didn't have the courage. Why not? Because I didn't deserve to be there. I didn't deserve to cry for someone I only made suffer. Are you talking about the secret? About Ethan? Teresa looked up quickly, surprised. You know about him? I found out a few weeks ago. Charlotte left letters explaining everything. How is he? The question came out fast, desperate. Is he okay? Is he alive? He's alive. He's 8 years old now, lives at St. Clair's orphanage. Teresa covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. William realized she was crying, silent tears streaming between her fingers. 8 years, she murmured. He's 8 years old, and I've never seen him since that day. Why did you do it, Teresa? Why did you leave your son? She wiped her face with the back of her hand, trying to compose herself. Because I was in a dark place in my life. Very dark. I was involved with a dangerous man, using drugs, had no money, no future. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. Charlotte helped you. She was the only one who did. When I called her, pregnant and desperate, she didn't judge me. Just asked what I needed. Hid me, took care of me, paid for everything. And when Ethan was born, her voice broke. When I held him for the first time, I knew I couldn't keep him. I would destroy that child just like I was destroying myself. So you just gave him away? I begged Charlotte to take care of him, said she would be a better mother than I ever could be, and she agreed on one condition, that I disappear completely from his life, that I wouldn't try to contact him, that I let her raise him in peace. And you agreed? It was best for him. I knew it then, and I know it now. Ethan deserved more than I could give. He deserved stability, love, a life without drugs and violence. William studied the woman in front of him. She seemed genuinely remorseful, but also realistic about her limitations. Are you still using drugs? I've been clean for 6 years, since a year after I gave Ethan to Charlotte. Hitting rock bottom woke me up. I almost didn't survive. But when I woke up in the hospital, I decided I had to change. For myself, and for the memory of the son I had abandoned. Why did you never try to contact him? You could have called Charlotte, asked about him. Because I was afraid that if I came back, I'd only cause more pain. Afraid that if Ethan knew about me, he'd hate me. It's easier to be a mother who never existed than a mother who abandoned. William leaned forward, his hands clasped. Teresa, I'm here because I want to adopt Ethan. I want to give him the home Charlotte dreamed of giving him. But for that I may need your permission, your formal relinquishment of parental rights. She stared at him for a long moment. Will you take good care of him? I'll give him everything he deserves. Education, love, stability. I'll honor Charlotte's memory by making him part of my family. Then you have my permission. I don't even need to think twice. If Ethan has a chance at a real family, a good life, I won't be the one standing in the way. Would you like to meet him, before signing the papers? Teresa remained silent for so long that William thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was heavy with emotion. I dream about him every night. I imagine what he's like, if he looks like me or his father, if he's happy, if he smiles. But I think it's better if I don't meet him. If I see him, I won't be able to let him go again. And he deserves someone who can stay. He looks like Charlotte, William said softly. He has the same eyes, the same birthmark. It's as if she lives through him. Teresa smiled through her tears. Charlotte always wanted to be a mother. Always. Ever since we were kids, she talked about having children, about building a family. When she found out she couldn't get pregnant, my heart broke for her. So when I gave Ethan to her, I knew I was giving her the greatest gift I could give. She thanked you. In the letters she left, she thanked you for trusting her. Can I see a picture of him? Just one picture? William hesitated. He had some photos on his phone taken during recent visits. He chose one where Ethan was smiling, eating ice cream, with those eyes shining with joy. Teresa took the phone with trembling hands, looking at the image as if it were the most precious thing in the world. He's beautiful, she whispered. So beautiful. And he looks happy. He is happy, or he's learning to be happy again. Take care of him, said Teresa, handing back the phone. Take care of my boy. And if one day when he's older he wants to meet me, know about me, tell him I loved him enough to let him go. Tell him what I did was because I wanted him to have a better life than I could give. I'll tell him. William left Teresa's apartment with a lighter heart. He had the answers he was looking for, and more importantly, he had the necessary consent to move forward with the adoption. But he didn't immediately tell Ethan about the meeting with Teresa. That was something that needed to be approached carefully, at the right time when the boy was ready. The adoption process officially began. There was more paperwork, more interviews, more evaluations. William had to open his life and his home to social workers who examined everything, from his finances to his mental health. Mrs. Catherine, his mother, showed up during one of these evaluations. She was a woman in her 60s, always impeccably dressed, with an air of superiority that William always found suffocating. So it's true, she said, entering the mansion uninvited. You're really trying to adopt a child from an orphanage. Good afternoon to you too, Mother. Don't be sarcastic with me, William. This is ridiculous. You're 45 years old, you have a company to run, responsibilities. You can't just decide to become a father overnight. It's not overnight. Charlotte wanted this. She loved this boy. Charlotte, Catherine said with barely concealed disdain. Charlotte had many romantic ideas about how the world works, but you should know better. William felt the anger rising. What exactly are you implying about my wife? That she was too much of a dreamer, too irresponsible. If she had told you about this situation, when she was alive, perhaps they would have resolved it differently. What other way, Mother? Ignore the existence of a child who needed help? There are institutions for that. You don't need to get personally involved. William took a deep breath, trying to control his temper. Mother, Ethan is Charlotte's grandson. He's part of her family, which means he's part of our family, and I'm going to adopt him, with or without your approval. Catherine studied him with those cold, calculating eyes that always made him feel like a child being judged. Then at least let me meet him. If he's going to carry the Bradford name, I have the right to know who we're dealing with. William wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but he agreed. Perhaps if Catherine met Ethan, if she saw the real boy instead of the abstract idea of an orphanage child, she might change her mind. He arranged a meeting a few days later at a cafe in downtown Aspen. Ethan was visibly nervous, adjusting the new shirt William had bought for him. "What if she doesn't like me?" the boy asked for the 10th time. "She will like you." "How could she not like you?" "Lots of people don't like me at the orphanage. They say I'm weird, that I don't know how to play right." William knelt in front of Ethan, holding his shoulders. "You're not weird. You're special. And anyone who doesn't see that isn't worth it." Catherine arrived punctually, as always. She wore a grey pantsuit and carried a designer purse. Her eyes scanned Ethan from head to toe in a quick, critical assessment. "So you're the boy," she said, sitting down without offering a smile or a warm greeting. "Yes, ma'am," Ethan replied softly, already shrinking back. "Look at me when you speak. Posture straight." Ethan automatically obeyed, straightening his back and lifting his chin. Catherine continued examining him in silence for a few seconds that felt like hours. "You really look like her," she said finally, and for the first time there was something different in her voice. It wasn't exactly warmth, but it wasn't the usual coldness either. The same eyes, the same birthmark. "You knew Charlotte?" Ethan asked timidly. "She was my daughter-in-law, and for the first time in years, I'm seeing something of her in front of me." William watched his mother cautiously. He didn't trust that sudden change in tone. "Mother, perhaps we could order something to eat and talk." "Yes, yes," Catherine waved distractedly, still looking at Ethan. "Boy, what's your story? How did Charlotte find you?" Ethan looked at William, seeking guidance. William nodded encouragingly. "She found me when I was a baby," explained Ethan. "My mother. My biological mother couldn't take care of me, so Charlotte took me to a safe place. She visited every week, always at 2 in the afternoon on Saturday. She brought sweets and books and stayed with me until dark. Every Saturday for 8 years, murmured Catherine, calculating mentally. That requires dedication, commitment. She never missed, said Ethan with pride. Even when she was sick, even when the weather was bad, she always showed up. Catherine was silent for a moment, and William thought he saw something like respect cross her face. Charlotte was stronger than I gave her credit for, she finally admitted. More determined. The waiter came to take their order, and gradually the conversation became less tense. Catherine asked Ethan questions about his favorite subjects in school, his hobbies, his dreams. The boy answered timidly at first, but opened up as he realized she was genuinely interested. "Do you play chess?" Catherine asked at one point. Ethan shook his head. "I never learned." "Then I'll teach you. Chess is important for developing strategy and critical thinking." William blinked in surprise. His mother was offering to spend time with Ethan. "Teach him things? Really?" Ethan asked, his eyes shining. "Really? We'll start next week." When they left the cafe, Catherine pulled William aside while Ethan looked at the shop windows nearby. "He's a good boy," she said bluntly. "Polite, smart, with good manners considering where he came from." "He's more than that, Mom. He's brave, resilient, capable of loving despite everything he's been through." Catherine nodded slowly. "Charlotte chose well. And if she loved him so much, and if you're committed to this, then I think the Bradford family can make room for one more." It was the closest to a blessing William would get from his mother, and he accepted it with gratitude. The weeks turned into months. The adoption process moved slowly, with its endless bureaucratic hurdles. But William didn't give up, and more importantly, Ethan began to believe it was really going to happen. The relationship between them deepened. It wasn't always easy. There were days when Ethan tested the limits, provoking William on purpose to see if he would leave. There were nights when the boy woke up from nightmares about being abandoned again. There were moments of anger, frustration, and doubt on both sides. But there were also moments of pure joy, like when William taught Ethan to ride a bike and the boy managed to pedal on his own for the first time, or when they went to the movies together and Ethan held William's hand during a scary scene, or when Ethan for the first time called him Dad. It was an accident. They were playing in the mansion's garden. William had started bringing Ethan home on weekends when Ethan tripped and scraped his knee. "Dad!" he shouted instinctively. "It's bleeding!" They both froze. William looked at Ethan and Ethan looked back, his eyes wide as he realized what he had said. "Sorry," Ethan began. "I didn't mean to—" "No," William interrupted, his voice choked. "Don't apologize. You can call me that, if you want." "Really? Really?" Ethan gave a shy smile, and in that moment, William knew that everything he had been through, the pain, the guilt, the difficult revelations, it had all been worth it to reach that moment. The visit to the city cemetery became a ritual for them. Every month, on the anniversary of when Charlotte passed, they went together. Ethan brought yellow flowers, and William brought a white rose, Charlotte's favorite. It was during one of these visits that Ethan finally asked the question William knew would come eventually. "Dad, do you think she's proud of us?" William looked at Charlotte's headstone, imagining her smile, that smile that always lit up an entire room. "I think so. I think she's happy that we finally found each other, that we're building the family she always dreamed of, even though it took so long. Especially because it took so long, because it means that when we got here, we were ready. You were ready to trust, and I was ready to truly be present." Ethan knelt before the headstone, touching the cold stone with reverence. "Thank you, Charlotte," he whispered. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for giving me a father." William felt tears streaming freely down his face. He didn't try to hide them. He let them fall, each one a mixture of sadness for what was lost and gratitude for what was found. The final adoption day arrived on a sunny October day, almost exactly 1 year after that first meeting at the cemetery. William was more nervous than at any business presentation he had ever given. Ethan was by his side in the courtroom, wearing a new suit that Catherine had insisted on buying. The boy kept fidgeting with his tie knot, clearly uncomfortable with the formality of it all. The judge, an older man with gentle eyes, reviewed the final documents and smiled at the two. "Well, Mr. Bradford, Mr. Ethan, we've reached the end of a long journey. I've carefully reviewed the entire process, spoken with everyone involved, and I'm satisfied that this adoption is in the child's best interest." He signed the documents with an elegant pen, each signature a step closer to making official what was already real in their hearts. "Therefore, by the powers vested in me, I declare that Ethan Collins is now legally and officially Ethan Bradford, son of William Bradford." The room erupted in applause. Margaret was there, crying openly. Catherine was there, nodding in approval. Robert was there, smiling discreetly. And even David was there, at the back of the room, his eyes red but sober for the first time in months. Ethan jumped into William's arms, hugging him with all the strength his small body could muster. "Am I really your son now?" he asked, his voice muffled by William's shoulder. "You always were," William replied, holding him tightly. "The papers just made official what was already true." That evening, William organized a small dinner at home to celebrate. Catherine was there, finally allowing Ethan to call her grandma. Margaret was there, happy to see one of her boys finally have a home. Even Robert showed up briefly, bringing a gift for Ethan. David stayed outside, not having the courage to come in. William saw him through the window, hesitating at the gate. He went out to talk to him. "I don't know if I'm welcome," said David, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. "I don't know if you are," William replied honestly. "But Ethan deserves to know everyone who was part of Charlotte's life, even those who made mistakes. I did more than make mistakes. I betrayed my sister in the worst way possible. And you'll have to live with that. But if you want to start making amends, you can start by being a decent uncle to Ethan. Not the uncle you were to Charlotte, but the uncle you should have been." David nodded slowly, wiping away a stray tear. "I can try. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I can try. That's all I'm asking." The following months were a time of adjustment and learning. Ethan had to get used to living in a big house, having his own room, attending a private school. It wasn't easy. He had frequent nightmares, felt out of place among his wealthy classmates, struggled with the feeling that he didn't deserve that life. William had to learn to be a father. He had to figure out how to help with homework, how to set boundaries, how to balance love and discipline. He made mistakes constantly, but he always tried to learn from them. Mrs. Catherine turned out to be a surprisingly dedicated grandmother. She took Ethan to chess lessons, taught him about art history, spent hours with him in the mansion's huge library. In a moment of rare vulnerability, she admitted to William that Ethan was filling a void she didn't know existed. "I always wanted grandchildren," she confessed. "But when you and Charlotte couldn't have children, I accepted that it wouldn't be possible. Now, somehow, Charlotte found a way to give me a grandchild even after she was gone." David struggled with his demons, but slowly started to appear more in Ethan's life. He would never be the perfect uncle, but he was trying. He stopped drinking, got a modest job, began rebuilding his life. Ethan, with the generosity only children have, forgave him more easily than the adults could. Teresa kept her distance as she had promised, but William stayed in touch with her, sending occasional photos and updates. She never asked for more than that, content to know that the son she had given up for a better life was truly getting that chance. 2 years after the adoption, on a winter day, much like the one when it all began, William and Ethan visited the cemetery again. The snow fell softly, covering everything with a pure white blanket. Ethan had grown over the past 2 years. He was taller, stronger, more confident. But when he knelt before Charlotte's headstone, he became that little boy again, crying as he hugged the stone. "Hi, Charlotte," he said, his voice more mature now. "I brought your dad, my dad, our dad. It still feels weird to say that, but it's good." William knelt beside him, putting his arm around his son's shoulders. "A lot has changed since that day," Ethan continued. "I have a home now. I have a real family. Grandma Catherine taught me how to play chess, and I'm getting good at it. Uncle David comes by sometimes, and we talk about you. Mrs. Margaret visits every month and always says you'd be proud." He paused, wiping away a tear that escaped. "I miss you every day. But it's not a hurtful kind of missing anymore. Now it's a warm kind of missing, you know, because I know you loved me. I know you wanted all of this for me, and I'm happy, Charlotte. For the first time in my life, I'm truly happy." William pulled Ethan close, hugging him as the snow continued to fall around them. "She's happy too," William said. "Wherever she is, she's happy because we finally became the family she dreamed of." They stayed there for a few more minutes, in silence, each lost in their memories and thoughts. When they finally got up to leave, Ethan naturally took William's hand, a gesture that was no longer rare or forced, but simply normal. "Dad," he said as they walked back to the car. "Yes? I think we saved each other." William stopped, looking at the boy who had become his son not by blood but by choice, by love, by the determination to honor the memory of an extraordinary woman. "I think so," he agreed. "I think so." And as they drove back home through the snow, William realized that for the first time since Charlotte had passed, he wasn't just surviving the days. He was truly living, truly present, being the man she always believed he could be. The story that began with pain and secrets had transformed into something beautiful. A family built on the foundation of the love Charlotte left behind. A family that honored her memory not through perpetual sadness, but through shared joy and continuous growth. Ethan had found a father, William had found a son, and Charlotte, even in her absence, had managed to create exactly what she always wanted, a complete, imperfect, but real family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The years that followed were full of moments that built the life Charlotte had dreamed of for them. Ethan was growing fast, each year bringing new changes, new challenges, new joys. When Ethan was 11, he decided to do a school project about his family. William felt tense when he heard the topic, worried about how Ethan would approach the complex situation of his origins. "I need to interview you and Grandma Catherine," Ethan said one night at dinner, "and I'd like to interview Teresa too, my biological mother." William nearly choked on his food. You want to meet her?" Ethan shrugged, trying to seem casual, but William could see the tension in his shoulders. "Not out of obligation or need, but I'm curious. And I think she deserves to know that I'm okay, that her decision to leave me with Charlotte was the right one. They talked at length about it that night. William didn't want to push anything, but he also didn't want to be the obstacle between Ethan and his origins. In the end, they agreed to contact Teresa and ask if she would be willing to meet. Teresa responded immediately. Yes, she wanted to meet Ethan, but she was terrified. 7 years had passed since William found her, and she still carried the guilt of having abandoned her son. The meeting was set in a neutral park in Denver. William brought Ethan but arranged to stay at a distance, giving them space to talk. Ethan was nervous, his hands sweating as they waited on the agreed-upon bench. When Teresa appeared, William could see where Ethan had inherited some of his features. The shape of the chin, the way the hair fell over the forehead, the expression in the eyes when he was thoughtful. "Hi," said Ethan, standing up. "I'm Ethan." "Hi," replied Teresa, her voice trembling. "I know who you are. You've grown so much." They sat down, with that uncomfortable silence of people who should be connected, but are strangers to each other. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," Ethan finally said. "I know it's not easy." "Thank you for wanting to know me," Teresa answered. "I didn't think it was possible. I thought you would hate me." "I did hate you," Ethan admitted with brutal honesty. "When I was younger, I hated you every night before going to sleep. I wondered what kind of mother abandons a baby. But then I grew up a little and understood that the world isn't that simple." "I couldn't take care of you," said Teresa, tears already streaming freely. "I was in a very dark place, Ethan. Drugs, dangerous relationships, no money, no hope. You deserved more than that." "I know, and I understand now. You gave me to someone who could love me properly. It wasn't abandonment, it was making sure I would be safe." Teresa sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "You are so kind. You didn't deserve a mother like me." Ethan looked to where William was sitting, far enough not to hear but close enough to observe. Then he looked back at Teresa. "You made mistakes, a lot of them, but I'm not that baby you left anymore. I'm someone who had love, who had opportunities, who had a family. And part of that was only possible because you had the courage to give me to Charlotte. So thank you for that, for the one truly good decision you made when you were at rock bottom." They talked for over 2 hours. Teresa told him about her life now, about how she had been clean for years, about the simple but honest work she had, about the therapy she was doing to deal with the guilt. Ethan told her about school, about playing chess with his grandmother Catherine, about the weekends he spent with William exploring the city, about the friends he had made. When they finally said goodbye, Teresa asked if she could hug him. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then opened his arms. It was a brief, awkward, but meaningful hug. "You don't have to be my mother," said Ethan. "I already had one, and she was perfect. But maybe you could be, I don't know, someone I know, someone who is part of my story." "I would love that," Teresa replied. "If you want, of course." On the way back to Aspen, Ethan was quiet, processing everything. William drove in silence, giving him space. "It was weird," Ethan finally said. "She seems like a good person now, but I can also see that she wouldn't have been able to take care of me back then. She was too broken." "Sometimes broken people make the bravest choices," said William. "Recognizing that you can't give someone what they need and letting go, that requires a different kind of strength." "Charlotte was strong in a different way," Ethan observed. "She was strong enough to stay, not to leave." "She was. And that's why you were so lucky to have both in your life. One gave you life, the other gave you love. Both, each in their own way, gave you what they could." When Ethan was 13, he began asking more about Charlotte's illness. William had always avoided details, saying only that she became very sick, but Ethan deserved to know the truth. "It was cancer," William explained one evening, after Ethan asked directly. "It started quietly, and when they found it, it had already spread too far. The doctor said she had maybe a year at most, and she knew that when she was still visiting me. Yes. In the last 6 months, she knew she was running out of time." "Why didn't she spend that time with you? Why did she keep visiting the orphanage?" William thought carefully before answering. Because you were important to her, as important as I was. She couldn't choose between us, so she tried to have both, even if it meant dividing the little time she had. Did she suffer? Yes, William didn't lie. Physically, yes. But I think the emotional pain of keeping the secret was worse. Ethan stayed silent for a long time. I made her suffer, he said finally. If she hadn't found me, she wouldn't have carried that burden. No, William corrected him firmly. You didn't make her suffer. You made her happy. Yes, there was pain in the secret, but there was also joy in every visit, in every smile of yours, in every time you called her. You brought light into her life at a time when it was growing dark. Do you think she regretted it? Finding me? Not for a second. I'm absolutely sure of that. Ethan eventually began writing letters to Charlotte. They weren't letters he expected her to read, of course, but they were his way of processing his feelings, telling her about his life, about the things he was learning. He kept these letters in a special box in his room. William found them once, accidentally, while looking for something. He didn't read them. That was private. But the simple fact they existed warmed his heart. When Ethan was 15, he won a regional chess tournament. Catherine was in the audience, cheering every move with a passion William had never seen in her. When Ethan won, she was on her feet applauding, tears streaming down her face. Your grandmother is proud of you, William said later while they celebrated with ice cream. I know, Ethan replied with a smile. She pretends to be all stiff and formal, but she's a softie deep down. William laughed, imagining Catherine's reaction if she heard that. Don't tell her I said this, but she's changed a lot since you came into her life. She's become more human. I think everyone changed, Ethan observed. You changed too, Dad. You work less, smile more. It's like you woke up after years of sleeping. It was true. William had drastically transformed his relationship with work. He still ran the company, but he had hired competent people to share the load. He prioritized family dinners, chess games, long conversations about everything and nothing. It took me too long to wake up, William admitted, but I finally did, thanks to you. Thanks to Charlotte, Ethan corrected. She brought us together, even after she was gone. David appeared sporadically in their lives. He would never become the close present uncle he should have been, but he had his moments. He had been sober for 2 years, working in a small shop, living modestly but honestly. During one of these encounters, he pulled William aside. I'll never forgive myself for what I did to Charlotte, he said, his words heavy with a weight he would probably carry until the end of his days. But seeing Ethan now, seeing the man he's becoming, at least I know that in the end, despite me, things turned out right. It wasn't despite you, William said, surprising even himself with the words. It was through you as well. You made terrible mistakes, but your failure was part of the path that brought us here. I'm not saying what you did was good, but it was real, and it was part of the story. David looked at him with moist eyes. You're kinder than I deserve. I'm not kind. I'm just too tired to carry anger beyond what I already carry for myself. In the years that followed, life continued at its natural pace. Ethan grew up, graduated high school with honors, earned a scholarship to a university in Denver. When the time came for him to leave home, both he and William struggled with the separation. You don't have to go, William said the night before Ethan's departure. There are excellent universities here in Aspen. You can stay, study from here. Dad, Ethan laughed. You know I need to go. I need to learn to be independent, to live my own life. But that doesn't mean I'll forget you or leave forever. I know, it's hard to see you go. I feel like we've only just begun. We have only just begun, Ethan agreed. But the beginning isn't the whole story. We have the rest of our lives ahead of us. And they did. Ethan visited every weekend he could. William visited Denver regularly. They talked on the phone almost every day. Catherine was devastated when Ethan left, though she tried to hide it. She filled the void by getting more involved in volunteer work, in projects Charlotte would have approved of. She donated generously to St. Clair's orphanage, making sure other children like Ethan had the opportunities he had. Teresa remained on the periphery of Ethan's life, but a constant presence nonetheless. They had lunch together once a month when Ethan was in Denver. It would never be a mother-son relationship. That place belonged to Charlotte. But there was a connection, a mutual respect, an understanding. When Ethan was 23, freshly graduated with a degree in psychology specializing in childhood trauma, he returned to Aspen with a specific purpose. "I want to work with orphanage children," he announced at his graduation celebration dinner. "I want to help children like me, who are lost, alone, needing someone who understands." "Charlotte would be so proud," said William, his voice choked. "That's why I'm going to do it," Ethan replied, "because she showed me the power of not giving up on a child. I want to pass that forward." Ethan began working at St. Clair's orphanage, the same place where he grew up. Mrs. Margaret had retired, but a new director had taken over, young and full of progressive ideas. She welcomed Ethan with open arms. Watching Ethan work with the children was surreal for William. He saw Charlotte in every gentle gesture, in every encouraging word, in every tight hug Ethan gave the little ones who arrived scared and hurt. "You have a gift," William said, after observing Ethan work for a few hours. "A gift that comes from having lived what they live." "It's not a gift," Ethan corrected. "It's a responsibility. I received so much love when I needed it most. It would be selfish to keep it just for myself." The circle was closing in a beautiful way. The boy who had been saved was now saving others, pain turning into purpose, loss turning into gain for others. 10 years had passed since that day at the city cemetery. Ethan was now 25, William was 55, Catherine was older, more fragile, but still as sharp as ever. David had found peace in his simple life. Teresa continued her quiet life, content to be a marginal but constant presence. And Charlotte was in every part of their lives, in the way Ethan treated the children, in the way William prioritized what truly mattered, in the way Catherine had learned to love beyond rigid expectations, in the way David sought redemption every day, in the way Teresa had found forgiveness, not from others, but from herself. On a winter day, similar to the one when it all began, William and Ethan visited the cemetery together. It was the 10th anniversary of Charlotte's passing. The headstone was more worn now, snow accumulating in its curves. But it remained the same place where everything changed. 10 years, said Ethan, touching the cold stone. "Half my life since she's been gone." "It feels like yesterday and like an eternity at the same time," William agreed. Ethan knelt, arranging the bouquet of yellow flowers they had brought. "Charlotte, I know I do this every year, but I need to thank you again. Thank you for finding me that day. Thank you for choosing to love me when no one else would. Thank you for being stubborn enough to keep visiting even when you were sick, and thank you for giving me a father." He looked at William. "Because without you doing all that, he and I would never have met, and my life would be completely different. Worse. Empty." William knelt beside his son, both before the headstone of the woman who had changed their lives even in her absence. "Thank you, my love," said William, "for never giving up, for carrying that secret even when it hurt, for believing I could be better than I was, for giving me a son when I didn't even know I needed one." They stayed there for a long time, in silence, each lost in their memories. The snow continued to fall gently, covering everything with that temporary purity only winter brings. When they finally stood up to leave, Ethan took William's hand. He was 25 years old now, a grown man, but in that moment he was the 8-year-old boy again, holding the hand of the father Charlotte had given him. "Do you think she knows," asked Ethan, "that we're okay?" "I'm sure," replied William. "Wherever she is, she knows, and she's smiling." They walked together back to the car, leaving behind the yellow flowers that brought light to the heart, even in a cold cemetery. The story that began with tears and secrets had transformed into something beautiful and lasting. Charlotte never saw the day when William and Ethan became a family officially. Never saw Ethan grow up, graduate, find his purpose. Never saw William become the father and man she always believed he could be. But in a way that transcended physical presence, she was in all of it. Every choice they made, every moment of connection, every instant of love, everything carried her mark. Because Charlotte had done something extraordinary, She had created a family not just through her living love, but through the love she left behind. A love so strong it continued building bridges, healing wounds, bringing people together even when she was no longer there to see it. And perhaps that is the true miracle. Not that William found Ethan in that cemetery, not that they managed to build a family despite the circumstances, but that a woman's love was deep enough, true enough, pure enough to transform pain into joy, secrets into revelations, loss into gain. Charlotte Bradford lived only 38 years, but her impact would echo through generations, through the son she saved and the husband she awakened, through the children Ethan would help and the lessons William would pass on. She was a simple woman who did extraordinary things, not through grand gestures but through small, constant acts of love, visiting an orphanage every week, bringing hidden sweets, reading stories, promising a better future, never giving up, even when everything inside her screamed to stop. And in the end, she had won. Not in the way she planned. She wanted to be there, alive, part of the family she created. But she won anyway, because her love created something that transcended her own life. William and Ethan continued their lives, carrying Charlotte with them in every step. Not as a weight of sadness, but as a light of gratitude. She had given each of them the greatest gift possible, each other. And perhaps that is the true meaning of unconditional love. Not just loving without conditions, but loving so completely that even when you're gone, that love continues doing its work, continuing to build, continuing to heal, continuing to create families where there was once only loneliness. Years later, when Ethan had his own children, he took them to visit that headstone in the cemetery. He told them about the extraordinary woman they had never met, but who was responsible for their very existence. "If it weren't for her," said Ethan, holding his 5-year-old daughter's hand, "none of this would exist. Grandpa wouldn't be my father. You wouldn't have been born. Our family wouldn't be what it is." "Was she a heroine?" asked the little girl, her eyes shining with childish curiosity. Ethan looked at William, who was there too, now an older man with white hair, but still with those eyes that had learned to see what truly matters. "Yes," Ethan finally replied. "She was a heroine, not the kind that wears a cape or fights villains, but the kind that saves people through small acts of kindness, repeated until they become extraordinary." The girl nodded, satisfied with the answer, and ran to place flowers on the headstone as her father had taught her. William put his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "She would be so proud of you, of everything you've become." "We did this together," replied Ethan. "You, me, Charlotte. A family built through hardships, but a real family nonetheless." And it was true, they were a family. Imperfect, unconventional, built through extraordinary circumstances, but real. More real than many families born of traditional ways. Because family, they learned, isn't about blood, it's about choice. It's about showing up day after day even when it's hard. It's about love that persists through obstacles, through pain, through even death. Charlotte chose Ethan. Ethan eventually chose William. William chose them both. And together, through these choices, they created something that would last forever. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story. Do you believe William made the right decision in adopting Ethan? Should Charlotte have told everything sooner? Leave your opinion in the comments with sincere words. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories that will move your heart.